Welcome to The Explainer. Right now, we are living through this massive, completely unprecedented transformation. It's happening right at the intersection of your daily commute and our global energy grid. We're essentially ripping up a century of combustion engines and replacing them with a totally new electrical ecosystem. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how this is all happening, why it actually matters to you, and frankly, the massive infrastructure challenges it brings along with it.
To really grasp the scale of this, think about this number: 30%. The transportation sector accounts for a whopping 30% of all U.S. energy needs. Historically, right, that huge appetite has been fed almost exclusively by petroleum, but as electric vehicles, EVs, rapidly take over the market, this absolutely gigantic chunk of our energy consumption is migrating straight over to the electrical grid. We're literally watching two of the largest sectors of the global economy merge together in real time.
And the speed of this transformation, it's just awe-inspiring. Bloomberg NEF projects that a staggering 23 million passenger EVs will be sold globally in 2026 alone. That incredible surge is mostly being driven by one huge factor: plummeting lithium-ion battery prices. We're talking a drop from over $1,000 per kilowatt-hour back in 2008 down to just over $130 recently. Because of that, we are quite literally swapping out gas tanks for batteries by the tens of millions.
But, as you might guess, growth this fast brings a really daunting macro-level hurdle. $800 billion, that's the estimated global grid investment required by the year 2040 simply to handle this massive surge in vehicles plugged into the wall. Because you see, it's not just about building the cars themselves. It's about physically building all the invisible electrical pipes needed to power them, and doing it without completely breaking the grid systems we already rely on every single day. Now, geographically speaking, this EV boom is incredibly concentrated. China absolutely dominates the space right now, grabbing about 63% of all electric cars sold globally. And projections show they'll still hold more than half the market by 2030. They've got a massive head start with a mature manufacturing supply chain and the lowest EV battery prices in the world. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, making up that remaining 37%, is sprinting to catch up. They're having to navigate bouncing policies and the really tough challenge of building local battery supply chains from scratch. But this shift goes way beyond just the passenger cars sitting in our driveways. When you look at projected global commercial electrification by 2030, city buses are actually leading the charge worldwide, expected to hit 60% of total sales. Following them are electric vans at 34% and heavy trucks at 17%. Now, why does this matter? Well, commercial vehicles drive significantly more miles than passenger cars, so electrifying them has this massive, outsized impact on cutting global oil consumption. But on the flip side, it also means they demand mind-boggling amounts of electricity to keep moving. Which brings us to the core conflict of today's explainer, the infrastructure bottleneck. Is our grid actually ready for global EV electricity demand to skyrocket to over 2,700 terawatt-hours by 2040? So how on earth do we solve this? Let's zoom in on a local micro-solution first. If a commercial fleet wants to set up traditional grid-tied high-power chargers right now, they're usually looking at months and months of utility delays, complex permitting, and complete grid redesigns. It is a massive headache. But there are alternative workarounds emerging, like the Epic and L-Charge system. This is a hybrid charging site that entirely bypasses the traditional utility grid and can literally be deployed in under a week. Here's how a setup like that actually works. These off-grid chargers run entirely on low-carbon fuels, like renewable natural gas or flare gas. Because there's zero utility connection needed, fleets aren't stuck waiting around for grid permits. Plus, it runs on what's called a charging-as-a-service model. That means no massive upfront capital costs for the hardware. It delivers ultra-fast DC charging that can service both private fleets and the general public at the same time. So you're generating revenue and cutting diesel emissions from day one. It's a really clever patch for local grid bottlenecks.
But let's be real. Off-grid solutions only solve a tiny piece of the puzzle. We need a systemic, macro-level fix. And that leads to a truly fascinating question. What if your car wasn't just a vehicle, but a mobile power plant? Think about it for a second. An electric vehicle is essentially just a massive, highly advanced battery on wheels, and it sits parked for about 90% of its life.
That whole concept is known as Vehicle Grid Integration, or VGI for short. The Department of Energy defines VGI as the intelligent integration of EVs with the electric grid.
The big goal here is to harmonize the EV's primary job, getting you from point A to point B, with our national electric infrastructure needs. If we actually get this right, we take something that was historically viewed as a huge liability, millions of cars draining the grid all at once, and turn it into a highly controllable, interactive, clean energy asset. It's a total game changer. So, in practice, the VGI ecosystem is all about bidirectional flow. Energy generated from wind and solar moves down the distribution lines straight to the chargers. But here's the magic. Through advanced controls and super tight cybersecurity, the vehicle doesn't just passively pull power. It actually communicates back and forth with the grid system itself. Let's quickly step through the different tiers of this to clear up some of the heavy industry jargon. Step 1 is V1G, often just called smart charging. This is simply adjusting when your car charges so it avoids peak grid hours. Easy enough. Step 2 takes it further, V2H or V2B. That stands for vehicle to home or vehicle to building. In a blackout, your EV can literally serve as a giant backup generator to keep your house running. And finally, step 3 is VTG, or vehicle to grid. This is where your car acts as a mobile storage unit that actually exports its stored battery power back to the public grid when overall energy demand is maxing out.
The ultimate potential of all this is captured perfectly by the U.S. Department of Energy. They noted that EVs aren't like typical loads, they actually have the potential to be mobile power export devices. Think about traditional appliances, right? Like your air conditioner. It just sucks power. End of story. But a fleet of EVs equipped with this technology could provide critical backup power during major emergencies. In extreme cases, they could even help grid operators with what's called a black start, basically restarting sections of the power grid in a coordinated way to recover from a massive, widespread blackout. Now, zooming out for a second, you can really start to see why this interdependency is absolutely crucial on a national scale. For over 100 years, our residential and commercial sectors have entirely dictated the design of the electric grid. Transportation was always this totally isolated bubble, completely relying on petroleum. But now, by electrifying our vehicles, we are essentially redrawing the entire energy map. We aren't just changing what kind of cars we drive, we are fundamentally rewiring our entire energy economy to be deeply, inextricably linked. Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away from today's explainer. The Bloomberg Outlook reminds us that by 2040, there will still be over 1 billion tailpipe-emitting passenger cars on the road globally. But they are steadily being replaced, literally day by day. As this massive multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure shift unfolds all around us, it really comes down to a choice in how we adapt. As you think about your own future on the road, is your next car just going to be another plug draining an already stressed grid? Or, through smart integration, will it be the exact tool that keeps the lights on? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.